Hi, it's Steve again, continuing the Martin Guitar Factory tour. We just got done viewing the machine room and sawmill and subassembly operations. Now let's check out how we actually manufacture the guitars. So one of the first steps that the operators will do is called a candling operation. Years ago, before we had electricity, they would actually hold a candle to the back side of a top panel to see if there's any imperfections hiding inside the wood. So we do a similar process, but we're using today's technology. So when the operators are looking at a top panel, they want to make sure there's no imperfections on here at all. So they'll use a mark out pattern to see. I can see a blemish in the top right here, but that's going to get cut out by the sound hole, so that won't be an issue. But once I turn a light on, I can see a major imperfection hiding inside the top here. That's probably a large sap pocket. So as an operator, I've got two choices. I can either scrap this top completely, or I can adjust my pattern so that maybe the bridge will cover that area. It's just a cosmetic issue. It's not a structural issue at this point. So the operator needs to recognize where those issues are so they don't become a bigger issue downstream. Here we are again, really utilizing technology to our advantage. Here we're using lasers to cut out the back panels. So years ago, we used to use CNC routers, or even before that, we were using scroll saws and band saws. They were very noisy, very dusty, very dirty. Router bits would get worn, you could cause chip outs. Now we're using laser technology. We don't have any of those issues. It's very clean, very quiet, and very, very efficient. After the tops and backs are cut out, the tops will come over to this area and actually have the rosette channel cut into the top. What that is this area right here. It's just a decorative channel that will go around the sound hole, depending on the style of guitar. Many different materials can be inlaid into that rosette channel, again, totally depending on the style of guitar. So once the tops and backs have been cut out, they'll be ready to get some bracing applied. Here's a really good example of our traditional cross bracing pattern, which will be utilized on the tops. Really good example of what the back bracing is going to look like with 4 just transverse cross braces and a traditional center back strip going through the middle. Here again, we're using technology to our advantage. Operators are using a glue wheel to put a little bit of glue onto the brace itself. Then they're going to load it into a form. Now, once she's done putting those braces on, she's going to close the lid. All the air will get sucked out, and there's a rubber membrane that will keep that brace exactly where it should be. This metal is heated up just a little bit as well. That heat will help the glue to dry just that much faster. What used to take 45 minutes to dry now takes about 10 minutes. She'll load it in the machine, the next one will come out, and it'll be ready for the next process. Similar operations are happening with the top braces right here. Now, we have a lot of different bracing patterns that we will utilize for all the different models that we make. So the operators will make sure that they grab the right bracing pattern, take it over to the bracing area, and again, similarly, we'll use the forms to keep the braces in place once they're all glued up. So on some guitars, the braces will actually get hand scalloped. You can see the operators here are using a chisel, and she makes it look super simple, but trust me, it is not an easy process. So what the scalloping does, it lightens up the braces itself. Gives you more sound out of that guitar top. You want as much flexibility on the top as possible. So that's exactly why we take the time to scallop the inside of the braces. After she has them chiseled out, she'll sand them down by hand. We always say we want the inside of the guitar to look as nice as the outside of the guitar. To my left here, we can see some custom shop operations going on here. So this is where the one-off custom guitars will first get assembled and built. Now, they'll do all the building operations, but they don't have a finishing room here. So those guitars can go out into the regular manufacturing floor, actually have the finishing done, and then come back into our custom shop. Here again, we've got some old school technology. You can see if you want your neck hand shaped the old fashioned way, we still have draw knives and files that we can use to hand shape a neck. We also have newer technology here as well. So if you ever wondered how we did all the fancy inlays on custom guitars, Chris here is one of our operators utilizing technology. He's using CAD programs to create the images on computer and can transfer it onto a shop bot. Now, we can also do it the old school way with a scroll saw or even a Dremel at this stage. So now we're moving into this side bending area. So we have many side bending presses. They'll determine the proper press to use to actually create the shape of the guitar. These presses are heated up to about 280 degrees. They'll load the flat stock in, and then that press will slowly create the shape of the guitar that we want. Once the shape has been created, they will then glue on a front block and a rear block to attach the two sides together. Once the two sides have been glued together, they'll also apply a ribbon material, which we can see the operator using right here. Now she's using some really high-tech tools there, some old school clothespins. I literally have pictures of my grandfather at the old plant before this facility was built using the same clothespins 50 years ago. So sometimes if it's not broke, then don't fix it. So here we are utilizing more technology with lasers. What these lasers here will do is actually engrave the CF Martin logo into the front block. Also, it will engrave the serial number of each guitar. Here we are in our actual body building department. So this is the first time the top, back, and side are coming together. What the operators here will take the rim and then very carefully route out a channel into the ribbon. When they do that, that will allow them to actually glue the top right into the empty spaces where the ribbon has been routed out. They're looking for a perfect fit every single time. Once they've established that perfect fit, they'll glue the top and back on. And here again, we'll utilize some technology. We have a stackable heated press. So if we see here, this black bag has actually filled with air. That acts as the press to keep the top and back glued onto that rim tightly. Years ago, we used to have these big wheels that we would turn to press the top and back side together. Now again, we're using technology to make life much simpler for the operator. Really looking to make some continuous improvement strides. This is called our phrasing operation. What this machine is doing is taking a very precise measurement of each guitar that we load inside there. Why that's important is because we work with wood material, so not every guitar body is the exact same shape and size. Once it determines the actual shape and size of that guitar, this machine will come in with a router bit and actually create a channel that we will then glue the binding material onto. Here you can see one of the guitars that the actual channel has been routed out. We'll then put a sample piece of the binding so that the operators know exactly what binding material should go on each particular guitar. So this is where the actual binding will get glued onto the guitar. So the operators here are responsible for making sure that this routed out channel is nice and clean, free of any voids or chip outs, and then they'll actually glue on the binding material. Here again, they're utilizing some technology. They've got an automatic tape dispenser. They've got an automatic feed glue gun, just really set up to make their lives a little bit easier. They've got tablets attached to their workbenches now. They can scan that tablet with a barcode, lets them know exactly what material they should be utilizing for each guitar body they work on. Some guitars will get pre-fit. So we can see the operator here is prepping a body to have the neck pre-fit into that particular body. Once he does that, that neck and that body will be married together forever. Now they'll go their separate ways for a while through the manufacturing process, but that neck will have to be fit into that body when it comes to that time a few weeks from now. Here we are in our neck assembly department. So we're doing a lot of little operations in this area. You can see the operators are prepping the fingerboard to have the frets hammered into each one of those slots. Once they get the frets seated into the slot, they will use a press over here to help seat them all the way down to the proper depth. Also in this area, they'll actually drill holes, put in each little piece of the side dots. They'll glue that fingerboard onto the barrel. They'll glue the nut on. All these little operations are happening all in this one area. So by the time it's done in this area, you should see a fully functioning neck at this point, fully assembled. The truss rod has been put on. The nut has been glued in and very carefully sanded to the proper width. Binding has been put on this guitar. All the side dots have been inlaid and frets are properly seated. Here we are in the pre-finish department. So what we're doing here is we're prepping the guitar bodies and they're prepping the guitar necks to go into the finishing operations, to sand the wood to the proper thickness and make sure that there's no imperfections in the wood at all. So let's check out how they do that. So here you can see the operators. They're utilizing a dust collection system and orbital sander. So they'll step through different grits of sandpaper, 150 grit, 180 grit, 220. Some of the lighter wood guitars will even go all the way up to a 320 grit sandpaper. Again, they're making sure there's no imperfections on these guitars. There shouldn't be any openings, any scratches, swirl marks. Anything they're looking for needs to be taken care of now before the finish gets applied. By the time it's done in this area, this guitar will actually be ready to have the first spray operations done. So we'll do similar operations with the necks here. The necks will get sanded at a downdraft table that will collect all the dust. Once the operators have done the orbital sanding, they'll bring it back to their workbenches. They'll use specialized gauges to ensure that the shape and barrel of the neck are the proper size that they're looking for that particular model. Once everything has been sanded, it'll get ready to have a stain and a filler applied. Once that stain gets applied to the neck or to the body, they'll also apply a wood filler. Now that wood filler is almost like a brownie batter when they put it on. They'll wipe it on, it'll haze over, and then get cleaned back off. Unfortunately, when we put a stain and a filler on, it will create sort of a brown haze. So we go old school again. This is an old hacksaw blade. What we'll do is we'll take this to a stone sharpener, create a sharp edge on here, and the operators will hand clean every square inch that was once white, has turned brown and needs to be cleaned up again. So in this area, you can see the operators are very meticulously using that blade to hand clean all of those bindings. It is a very tedious operation. If they make a mistake and actually get into the wood, it'll have to go backwards and get resanded so that there are no imperfections. So here we can see guitars that have been sprayed already at this point. So these are our inspectors. What they're doing is inspecting the finish. Our finishing process, depending on the model of guitar, can take up to 10 days to complete. The inspectors are ensuring that the finish is in spec for the guitar that they're working on. They want to make sure there's no runs or air bubbles or small pieces of dirt. If they find any of those issues, they will sand them out, take care of them. They have a touch-up booth that they can utilize. They'll take the guitars inside that booth, do any respraying if needed. Again, getting each guitar to the proper specifications that it's looking for. So in this area is our two main spraying rooms. So in one room, we'll run our nitrocellulose lacquer. The other room is our catalyzed finish. Finishing operations have come a long way since I started here. Back in my day when I used to do the spraying, we did it all by hand. So we would literally take a guitar body in one hand, like this. As an operator, you had a spray gun in your right hand, and you spent your day doing this sort of operation all day. Well, you do that long enough, and your shoulder is just on fire from holding that guitar body all day, and the operators were in an environment with the overspray, constantly turning the spray gun on and off. So we said, look, we need a better way to do this. We now have a conveyor system where we can load the guitar bodies and necks onto, and we're utilizing robotics to do the spraying for us. So we've taken the grunt work off of the operators and put it onto the robotic spraying arm. So that arm will have a spray gun attached to the end of it. No longer do we have issues with employees getting hurt shoulders, arms, elbows, carpal tunnel issues, things like that. Okay, in this area we are doing the actual finished sanding. So we need to go and sand the actual finish that's been sprayed. Now, what the operators are responsible for, they don't want to sand it too hard because we want the finish to remain on there. So there's a fine line of not sanding enough and sanding too hard. So these operators are trained to sand just the right amount. Now these guitars will go through a series of spraying processes. It'll get sprayed one day, it'll go into our drying room for at least 24 hours. The guitar bodies and necks will get sanded, they'll get inspected, and then get resprayed again and go through that process all over again. So that's where about a 10-day process can take over here. Inside here is our actual drying room where we'll store the bodies and necks that were sprayed probably yesterday. They'll dry in here for at least 24 hours. But this stage, the bodies and necks have all been sprayed. Various times they've been dried, sanded, inspected again. Now it's ready to actually polish the guitars. So here again, we are utilizing technology. Back in my day, when we did the polishing, we did it all by hand. The guitar body would be on a pedestal and we had these big heavy buffers that we would grind down the orange peel all day. Well, that led to a lot of wear and tear issues on the body. So again, we said, we need to make this a better process. So again, we're utilizing robotics to do the grunt work for us. There is a rough wheel and a fine wheel that this guitar body will step through. The robot does not have eyes. So once the robot is done doing its operations, that's when the operators take over. Bright lights will be put on that guitar and they will look for any slight imperfections, making sure that everything is nice and level, there's no dust or dirt on it, getting it to that point where it looks immaculate. Here we are in our pearl inlay department. This is where the very intricate mother of pearl will get inlaid into the different guitar parts. Here you can see an example of a very intricate, ornate fingerboard. We can also inlay pearl into the guitar bodies, into the guitar necks. It is a very meticulous operation. You can see Joel here, one of our pearl inlay artists, is very meticulously hand inlaying each piece of pearl. Now he needs to be very careful that he doesn't leave any voids or openings inside that pearl, because it can cause major ramifications downstream when they go through the spraying and polishing processes.